A dinner party built on secrets, until one guest never left alive. Welcome to Clue Law. I am your host, Vale. Comment where you're watching from. This community's voices keep these mysteries alive. Now, into the story. If there's a kind of hush that has a flavor, ours on West 35th has it at about 10:15 on a Tuesday. Not the time of day, the mood. Fritz was up to his elbows in whatever holy rite turns groceries into lunch. Theodore Horstman was likely on the roof making sure the orchids were breathing right, and Nero Wolfe was in the big red leather chair in his office, where he sits the way other men stand. I was at my desk doing what I'm paid to do, which is mostly to make sure the world doesn't break into that hush without paying at the door. The doorbell rang. You don't ignore that sound in our house, not even if you've just sat down after a 7-minute argument with a certain large employer about why the word unavoidably should not be preceded by quite. I got up, went through the hall, and opened the door. The woman on the stoop had the kind of careful posture that says she's spent a lifetime being looked at and has learned which angles to offer. Mid-30s, slim, expensive coat, hat that had to be a deliberate choice, and eyes the color of a polished brownstone step after rain. She was holding a folded envelope as if it were a passport. "Mr. Goodwin." "That depends on whether you're selling vacuum cleaners or trouble." I stood aside. "Come in." She stepped into the hall, shook light drizzle off her hat with a small motion, and took a breath as if the air inside was different. She looked around like people do the first time, not at the rugs or the mahogany, but at the idea of the place. "I'm Celia Vardis," she said. That meant nothing to me at the door. It meant something by the time she took 2 steps, because I caught the faint perfume of money and worry. Those come together in only a few combinations, and one of them is client. "Archie Goodwin." I pointed toward the office. "Mr. Wolfe is in there. He doesn't like surprises, so if you are one, maybe we'll keep it gentle." Her mouth pulled into half a smile that didn't reach the eyes. "My surprise comes with an appointment." She handed me the envelope. The flap was sealed. On it, in metal pen handwriting, was Nero Wolfe with our address. Under that, in a smaller hand, was important. You don't write important unless you're hoping to make something so. "How did you get that in here sealed?" I asked. "I mailed it yesterday, special messenger. He promised not to open it." "Then he didn't know you." I slipped the envelope into my pocket. "All right, follow me." I led her past the office door and into the reception room instead. "We've learned a few things about first moves. You don't take a new face straight to Wolfe unless you want him to make a game of saying no." I gestured to a chair. "Sit. I'll see whether he's in a yes mood, which happens occasionally." "Thank you." She sat, not too carefully, like she wasn't trying to impress the furniture. Her hands remained clasped in her lap. I went into the office. Wolfe was in his chair. If a mountain could look bored, it would look like Nero Wolfe looks at 10:15 on a Tuesday. His massive head was tilted slightly down. The eyes were on a small volume that had the thick, solemn look of something written before cars. "Someone named Celia Vardis," I said. He didn't look up. I heard the bell. "She has a sealed note to you." I intercepted it. Now the eyes came up, not hurried, just precise. "Give it to me." I handed it over. He examined the seal, the handwriting, the paper, like a man tasting a wine by looking at the bottle. Then he slit it with his letter opener and extracted a single card. He read. His upper lip moved a millimeter. "That's the Wolfe equivalent of a fire alarm." "Well," I said. He read it again. If he read it a 3rd time, I was going to call a priest. Instead, he set it on the desk. "You may show her in." "Look at that. You're getting sociable in your old age." "Should I be concerned?" "Always, Archie, but not about my sociability. Bring her." I went back to the reception room and found her looking at a painting of a landscape as if it were a clue. I nodded toward the office. "He'll see you." She rose and followed me in. Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. "Miss Vardis, sit down." She sat in the red chair opposite, the one that makes nervous people feel like they're in a dentist's drill. She was composed, not calm, but practiced. Wolfe said, "You have written me a curious invitation." Her brows lifted. "You received it?" "I received it. I'm not persuaded that I will accept it. Explain yourself." She took a moment, as if deciding whether to jump into cold water. "Tomorrow evening I host a dinner at my home. 8 guests besides myself. I want you there." Wolfe's face remained neutral. Mine didn't. "You want him at a dinner party," I said. "Do you have any idea what that does to a kitchen schedule?" Her eyes flicked to me with a little irritation and then back to Wolfe. "I understand Mr. Wolfe doesn't leave his house lightly, but I don't have another option." "You have many options," Wolfe said. "You are here. That implies you can come to me. If you require counsel, you may state your problem here, in my office, without sending me to yours to eat your food." "It isn't about counsel," she said. "Then it is about theatrics. I disdain theatrics unless they are necessary to a solution. Be explicit." She was explicit. Not fast, not emotional, but in that restrained way that suggests someone who's been holding a bone between her teeth for a long time. "The dinner is not social. It is a forced truce." Wolfe's eyes narrowed, slightly. "Between whom?" "Between people who would rather be elsewhere. My husband died 3 months ago, Anton Vardis." She watched for a reaction. Wolfe didn't give her one. "He founded Vardis Imports, the shipping and specialty foods company. I inherited majority control through his will. There has been resistance. The dinner is my attempt to reset the terms with those involved." I felt my mind snag on specialty foods. Fritz would feel that too in the spine. And I knew the name. Vardis Imports had a steady presence in the fancy market world. Their boxes ended up in restaurants with linen napkins. Wolfe had once grumbled about the quality of their white truffles compared to Azzolino's, which told you he'd paid attention. Wolfe said, "Your company is irrelevant unless it is to be stolen." Her expression tightened. "It is." "By whom?" "By one of the people coming to dinner." She looked down for half a second, then met Wolfe's eyes again. "Perhaps more than one." "Name them." She drew a breath. "My late husband's executive partners, his brother, his attorney, and possibly his chef." "Chef," I said. "That's a twist." She didn't smile. "Anton was devoted to dining, not merely eating. He built a life out of dinners. His chef, Basil Holt, managed the kitchen as a stage." Basil is not an employee in the usual sense. He knew Anton's habits, his private business meetings, his tastes. He also knows my house. "Go on," Wolfe said. "Tomorrow's dinner includes Hugo Vardis, Anton's brother, Margaret Cleave, the company's CFO, Leo Kershaw, the operations director, Dana Rook, Anton's attorney and executor, and Basil Holt. There are also 2 peripheral guests meant to soften the room. Father Emile, who counseled my husband privately, and Dr. Klein, our family physician." Wolfe's eyelids lowered slightly. That was interest, not sleep. She continued. "Something has been happening since Anton's death. Documents copied, decisions sabotaged, a storage contract cancelled without my signature, a shipment rerouted to Connecticut and sold to a buyer we've never dealt with. It is coordinated, but coordinated from inside. I can't prove it." "Why not?" Wolfe asked. "Because each act looks like incompetence or accident unless you see the pattern. And I only see the pattern because I receive the consequences. Every time I try to tighten control, they smile and tell me I don't understand the company. That Anton didn't intend for me to run it in practice. That I should sell. Or step aside, I won't." Wolfe said, "If these people are attempting to steal your business, I can investigate without attending your dinner." You can investigate, she said, but you will be investigating blind. Because tomorrow night is where the true alignments will show. Anton designed the dinner. That landed. I saw it in her face as she said it. Not as theater, as fact. Wolfe was silent. She leaned forward slightly. He planned it before he died. Not this exact guest list, but the idea. He was a gambler in small ways. He believed the table shows you what men want. An office is a mask. A dinner is a confession. He said so to me more than once. I put it in my mental notebook. Wolfe likes confessions, especially when they come with sauce. Wolfe ignored me, which was his compliment. He said to her, "Your letter implies danger." Yes. Specify it. She hesitated. Not because she didn't want to say it, but because saying it made it real. I believe someone will attempt to compel me to sign over control tomorrow night, or, failing that, to discredit me publicly. There is also a smaller fear. She paused. I'm not certain the dinner will end without a catastrophe. You anticipate violence? I anticipate a trap. Not necessarily for me. She looked at Wolfe dead on. Anton's death was ruled natural, a heart event. He was 56, overweight, and a notorious eater. It fit. But I found a notation in his private ledger the day after the funeral. 4 words. She opened her purse and removed a small notebook. Torn from it was a paper strip folded twice. She handed it to me, and I passed it to Wolfe. He unfolded it. On it was a line in Anton Vardas's scrawl. Dinner Thursday. If I'm wrong, I'm dead. Wolfe read it once, and the millimeter on his lip came back. I don't understand it, Celia said quietly. Anton never wrote like that. He didn't leave notes to himself. He left invoices. It was wedged behind the ledger cover, as if he wanted to hide it but also wanted me to find it. I have lived with that sentence for 3 months. I could feel the hush in the house shift. Not break. Tilt. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, even the walls notice. Wolfe asked, "Why have you waited 3 months to bring this to me?" Because 3 months ago, I still believed the people around me were grieving. Her tone turned flat. They aren't now. They're circling. And tomorrow is the dinner Anton postponed twice because of his health. He insisted on it near the end. Basil says he planned the menu until 2 days before he died. Wolfe said, "You think this dinner is connected to his death?" I don't know what to think. I only know I'm being pushed toward a cliff, and the cliff is at my table. Wolfe was quiet again, the kind of quiet that isn't absence, but manufacture. He looked at the strip of paper, then at her. "At what hour is your dinner?" 8. Guests arrive at 7:30. In Gramercy Park? Yes. And you wish me to attend? To observe, to deduce, and perhaps to prevent a calamity? Yes. Wolfe leaned back a hair, which for him is like a sequoia leaning in a storm. I dislike leaving my house. I dislike social meals. I dislike being used as a talisman to intimidate your guests. His eyes hardened. A shade. But I do not dislike puzzles that involve human appetite, greed, and a man who left a sentence behind his own ledger like a thorn. She waited, still. Wolfe said, "I will accept your invitation on one condition." "Name it." "My involvement is not to be announced beforehand. None of your guests may know I am coming. If you tell them, I will not go." He looked at me. "Archie will accompany me." I blinked. "You're taking me to a dinner party?" I said. "Should I pack a parachute?" "I require your eyes and legs, as always. There may also be need for your tongue, though I hope not." Celia let out a breath she'd been holding. Her shoulders dropped a notch. "Agreed. No one will know. Not even Basil." "That may be difficult," Wolfe said. "A chef notices." "Basil notices what happens in his kitchen," she replied. "He does not notice who I invite if I don't tell him. I will treat you as a late addition. A friend of Anton's I've decided to honor privately. Basil won't challenge me on it." Wolfe nodded once. That was yes. Not approval, not trust. Just the decision. "Very well," he said. "Archie will arrive early tomorrow afternoon to confer with you, to inspect the premises, and to speak with your staff. You will send a car at 7:15 for us." His gaze held hers. "If you are lying to me, Miss Vardis, you will regret it. If you are not, someone else will." Her lips pressed together. "I'm not lying." Wolfe lifted a hand with finality. "Then we have an arrangement. Archie will see you out and take your details." She stood. "Thank you, Mr. Wolfe." I walked her to the hall. She gave me her address and a number where she'd answer without a secretary. We reached the stoop. "Miss Vardis," I said. "Yes?" "This dinner of yours. You do realize that if you invite my boss, something's going to get carved besides the roast." She almost smiled. "That is why I came." She stepped out into the drizzle once more and went down the steps like someone who has decided to walk through the fire rather than around it. I came back in, closed the door, and leaned against it for a second, tasting the new flavor in our hush. When I got to the office, Wolfe was still studying Anton Vardis's strip of paper like it might be a rare orchid with rot under the petals. "Well," I said, "we're going to a party where nobody wants to be there, and somebody may want to be dead. Any early theories?" He didn't look up. "Only that a man who writes, 'If I'm wrong, I'm dead,' suspects he has been poisoned by circumstance, if not by substance, and that his widow has courage. And that you have a weakness for menus with subtext." He looked at me then, eyes cool and weighty. "Archie, if the sanctity of our brownstone has been disturbed by this invitation, it is because I chose to let it. Tomorrow you will be alert. Tonight I will dine as usual. Bring me my beer." I grinned because that's my job too. "Right away, and I'll try not to poison you by circumstance." As I headed for the kitchen, I was thinking about a dinner built like a chessboard, a dead man's ledger thorn, and 5 people circling a widow's business like wolves with napkins tucked in. That's the thing about dinners. They look civilized until you notice the knives. Wolfe's "bring me my beer" was the nearest he comes to a dismissal, so I took it as one and went downstairs. Fritz had lunch ready with the kind of calm confidence a man gets from knowing his sources obey him. He glanced at my face and the tilt of my shoulders. "Trouble?" he asked in that gentle way of his, as if trouble were a child who'd wandered in from the street. "Maybe. Tomorrow night we're eating someplace else." Fritz's brows went up. "Mr. Wolfe goes out?" "Apparently." I pulled the bottle from the icebox and slid it onto a tray with a glass. "Gramercy Park, widow with a shipping empire, and a dinner table full of sharks." Fritz tutted softly. It could have meant pity for the widow, or concern for Wolfe's digestion. With Fritz, it's always a coin tossed in the air. "Then you will be careful. Sharks at a table may bite with forks." "I'll try to keep my fingers." I carried the beer up and found Wolfe at his desk now, the strip of paper set beside his blotter like a bookmark in a nasty chapter. He took the tray with a grunt of approval, sipped, and stared at the words again. "You think it's real?" I asked. "It is real ink on real paper." He lifted heavy eyes to me. "Whether it is a real apprehension or a manufactured one, we will learn." "You're not skeptical?" I'm always skeptical, but an unexpectedly candid note hidden behind a ledger cover indicates either desperation or design. Both are fertile. Design by whom? Do not make me repeat myself. We will learn. He set the glass down. You will go tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Bring your notebook. Observe everything. Speak to the chef. Speak to the staff. Speak to Miss Vardis. Find out who among her guests had meaningful access to her husband at the time of his death, and who has meaningful reason to wish her pliant now. Saul? I said. Not yet. There is no crime, only an odor. One does not call Saul Panzer to admire an odor. First one confirms it is not merely the kitchen. I took that and backed out. With Wolfe, when he says a thing once, he's already said it twice in his head. The rest of the afternoon dribbled by in routine ways that felt slightly fake, with a dinner trap sitting on tomorrow's calendar. At 4, a messenger came with a discreet little basket from Vardis Imports, probably Celia's idea of good faith. Fritz opened it like it was a Christmas present from his favorite nephew. There were truffles, a tin of anchovies that looked like they'd been caught yesterday and dressed by angels, and a bottle of Armagnac that would make Wolfe listen to a violin concerto without complaining. Fritz beamed. Wolfe sniffed once, decided it was not bribery but tribute, and returned to his book. I made a note. Celia Vardis either understood the house or had a very shrewd instinct for bait. That evening at dinner, Wolfe said almost nothing about the case, which is how you know it has lodged. He ate Fritz's Boeuf Bourguignon with a concentration that had nothing to do with Burgundy, and when I brought coffee he said, "Archie, at the dinner tomorrow, you will sit where you can see the room. Presumably not on the chandelier. If necessary, on the chandelier. I want your eyes on mouths. When people are forced to be social, their mouths betray them. Their silences do too." Got it. Anything else? Yes. Do not allow yourself to be impressed by wealth. It is the most common disguise for vulgar motives. Lucky for me, I'm immune. He looked at me in that way that implies he has seen my suit bills. Then he stood, slowly, heavily, and went to the elevator. That was his version of getting ready. Sleep on a puzzle and let it sprout. I did the same, except my sleep is lighter and comes with dreams where dinner forks are used for things besides salad. Wednesday came damp and grey, which felt fitting. At 2, I took a cab down to Gramercy Park, got out on a quiet block where the brownstones look like they've been polishing their doorknobs since Lincoln. Celia Vardis's house was one of the broad ones with iron railings and a front door that had never known cheap paint. She opened it herself, no maid in sight, and led me into a front parlor with old money furniture and new money restraint. The air smelled faintly of lemon oil and tension. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, offering a hand. Her grip was firm. She looked a shade paler than yesterday, but steadier. "Thank you for coming." "My boss likes to be prepared for a dinner he didn't want," I said. "So do I. Let's start with the house." She nodded and took me on a tour. Not the kind for polite company, the kind for a man looking for where trouble might sleep. We walked through the dining room first. Long mahogany table, 10 chairs, silver already laid out on a sideboard like weapons on parade. There was a big mirror on one wall that could show you 2 angles of a liar at once. "Where does the staff circulate?" I asked. "Through the pantry corridor. Kitchen is below." She gestured toward a door at the rear. "Basil keeps the layout old-fashioned. No wandering through the front. That's considerate. For him, anyway." We went down to the kitchen, and there was Basil Holt. Medium height, athletic in a lean way, black hair slicked back, and that clipped, self-contained air people get when their ego has been validated for years by other people's appetites. He was supervising 2 assistants chopping and simmering like it was a rehearsal for an opera. He looked up, saw Celia, and his face went carefully neutral. "Mrs. Vardis, everything on schedule." "Good. Basil, this is Archie Goodwin, a friend of mine. He'll be here this afternoon." "A friend?" Basil said, measuring me in one glance that took in my tie and my shoes and decided whether I was kitchen-worthy. "Of course," I smiled. "I promise not to fall into your stockpot." A flicker behind his eyes. Annoyance or amusement, hard to tell. "You'll find it hot." Celia started to say something, then paused, and her eyes slid toward a small leather folder on a shelf beside the prep table. I followed the glance. Basil followed mine. He said coolly, "The menus are finalized. Mr. Wolfe will have no cause to complain. That was a neat little jab at someone he wasn't supposed to know was coming. I filed it away where I keep sharp objects. I let Basil Holt's line hang in the steam a moment the way you let a fish show its belly before you hook it. Mr. Wolfe complains about weather, taxes, and the decline of Latin, I said easily. Food only when it deserves it. Sounds like you're confident. I'm competent, Holt replied. He turned back to his assistants, ending the exchange the way a chef ends a sauce, by deciding it's done. Celia watched him for half a second too long, then moved toward the stairs. We can talk upstairs. We climbed back to the pantry corridor and into a small morning room that looked out on a courtyard with bare vines. She closed the door with a soft click and leaned on the back of a chair without sitting. You noticed, she said quietly. Noticed what? That your chef has the manners of a man who knows where all the bones are buried. Sure, but I also noticed you looked at that folder like it had teeth. Her mouth tightened. That folder is Anton's. Basil keeps it. Recipes, menus, guest lists from dinners he staged for my husband. Anton liked to annotate them. Basil won't let anyone handle it without him. And you don't like that. I don't trust it. She hesitated. Or him. Because he just took a swipe at Wolfe he wasn't supposed to know is coming. Her eyes widened a fraction. You heard it that way. I heard it that way because he said menus are finalized. Like the menu was a line of defense. And he said, Mr. Wolfe, like he wanted me to know he'd already placed him on the board. She let out a breath. Then he knows. Maybe. Or maybe he's guessing. Chefs have ears. So do kitchens. Anton might have mentioned Wolfe's name in the past and Basil stored it away. Either way, he didn't stumble into that sentence. She nodded once, and something like anger flashed across her face before she smoothed it down. Basil was devoted to my husband. He's also devoted to Basil. Those devotions don't always play nice together. No, and he has every reason to resent me. Anton treated him like a collaborator, not an employee. He paid him a salary that turned my accountants green. After Anton died, Basil expected me to keep everything the same. Did you? I tried. But the company is bleeding money through those accidents. I asked Basil to reduce costs at the house. He said no. He said Anton wouldn't have wanted it. And you said? I said Anton isn't here. That had been a bad sentence at the wrong time. You could tell from the way she said it now, like picking a splinter out of your thumb and finding it still hurts. Basil didn't shout. He isn't a shouter. He just looked at me and said, Then you are. It wasn't a threat exactly. It was a verdict. Verdicts can turn into threats when people get hungry. She sank into a chair finally, as if the weight of the last 3 months had slid back onto her shoulders. Do you think he could have harmed Anton? Think? I'm not paid to think, I'm paid to notice. I'll tell Wolfe what I notice, and he'll do the thinking without moving a muscle. She gave me a small smile for that, the first real one I'd seen. What else do you need to know? Let's set the table in my head. Start with the guests. I want your version of each, not their business cards. She didn't like that, but she did it. She was a practical woman, and I was already in her house with my boss, coming in under false pretenses. Hugo Vardis, she said. Anton's brother. They were never close. Hugo is charming in rooms he wants to dominate. He has no position in the company, but Anton supported him anyway. Paid his debts, gave him contracts. Hugo thinks I'm temporary. Temporary like a cold, or temporary like a tombstone. Like a mistake. Her jaw set. He wants the company sold. He wants his share in cash. Okay, Margaret Cleave. CFO, brilliant. Loyal to the firm, not to me. She believes Anton's will was unwise. She never says it directly. She says it through spreadsheets. Numbers can be sharp. Leo Kershaw, she went on. Operations. He built the shipping network with Anton. He is the one most offended by my presence. He thinks I don't understand logistics, which is true, and therefore I shouldn't understand anything. He smiles while he cuts you. Dana Rook? Celia's eyes cooled, which told me Rook was a special flavor. Attorney and executor, smooth, always phrasing things as if he's doing you a favor. Dana drafted the will. Dana knows exactly how much power I have. He's been suggesting I appoint a management committee, which in practice would mean I sign checks and they make decisions. Father Emil and Dr. Klein are window dressing? Not exactly. Emil was Anton's confessor, unofficially. Anton trusted him. She looked away. Maybe more than he trusted me at the end. Dr. Klein is our physician. He treated Anton for his heart. I asked him to come because I want his eyes on the room, and because I can't stop hearing that line in Anton's ledger. I nodded. And the push to sign over control. Who's driving it? I don't know. They all circle it. Hugo jokes about it. Margaret frames it as risk management. Leo frames it as efficiency. Dana frames it as legality. It's a chorus. Choruses usually have a conductor. Her hands twisted together. That's why I need Wolfe. Right, 2 more things. First, Anton's last week. Any unusual dinners? Any guests who came when you weren't present? She started to answer, then paused with a tiny frown. There was one dinner, 8 days before he died. Thursday. I felt the air shift again. The Thursday in the note. Yes, she swallowed. Anton insisted on hosting a small gathering. Only 4 guests besides us. Hugo, Margaret, Leo, and Dana. Basil cooked. I was at the table, but Anton and the men drank Armagnac afterward in the library without me. Basil served them. Anton was tense. He kept pushing conversation towards something. I couldn't make out what. And after they left? Anton was exhausted. He went to bed early. The next morning he was fine. 3 days later he was dead. I let that settle in. A Thursday dinner, the same 4 wolves, the same chef. A note hidden afterward. If I'd been a comic book detective, a spotlight would have come down from the ceiling. Instead I said, second thing, security in this house. Anyone besides staff with keys? Anyone who comes and goes unannounced? She gave a short laugh that wasn't amused. Everyone who thinks they have rights here. Hugo has a key from years ago. I asked for it back. He said he lost it. Dana has access through the office. Leo and Margaret have been here only for business meetings. Basil has keys to every door that matters to him. Which is most of them. Yes. I stood. All right, I want to look at the library and the dining room again. Specifically where people could stand without being seen, where a glass could be switched without drama, and where a sentence like, "If I'm wrong, I'm dead," might have been born. Then I'm going to step out and make a couple calls. To whom? To a man who sells information the way Basil sells soufflés. We may not be calling Saul Panzer yet, but I know a couple of other operators who don't mind an odor. She rose with me, steadier now that the facts were out. If you find anything, I'll find it. I tried to make it light, because that's what I do when a room is heavy. Just keep your guests believing tomorrow night is a dinner, not a battlefield. Wolfe likes his battlefields pretending to be polite. She nodded slowly. So did Anton. Yeah, I said, looking toward the hall that led to the library. And somebody may have used that preference against him. Celia led me to the library like a tour guide who has seen the map turn into a crime scene. The room had the easy dignity of money that's been around long enough to stop bragging. Dark shelves, deep chairs, a globe that wasn't decorative, and a low table where a man could set his drink down and forget it was the last one of his life. This is where they went after dinner, she said. I walked it slowly. You don't barge into a room like that if you wanted to talk. I let my eyes do the walking. Chairs positioned in a semicircle near the fireplace, decanters on a sideboard, an ashtray polished to a respectable shine. No obvious secrets, no hidden trap door to Connecticut. Where did Basil serve from? I asked. She pointed to a narrow door near the back. Service corridor. It connects to the pantry and down to the kitchen. I went over and opened it. The corridor was dim, narrow, built for silent movement. There was a small alcove with a shelf. I could picture Holt pausing there with a tray, listening before he entered. A man who wants to overhear doesn't need to be a spy. He just needs a good doorway. I came back into the library. Anton's chair, the one by the window. She moved to it, touched the back lightly. He liked to look out at the park when he drank. Who sat closest to him? Hugo to his right, Leo opposite, Margaret on the sofa, Dana by the hearth. She wasn't guessing. She'd replayed it 100 times. I nodded, storing positions like chess pieces. Any food served in here? Just Armagnac, and coffee at first, but they didn't finish it. Basil took it away. Coffee taken away early is a small thing, unless it isn't. I looked at the low table. Did Anton ever complain about the Armagnac? Say it tasted off? Too strong? No. She shook her head. He said the opposite. He said Basil had picked a bottle that punched like virtue. That sounds like Anton. Who supplied the Armagnac itself? The company? Basil? Your husband? Anton did. From Vardis's private reserves. He kept the key to the liquor cabinet. She gestured to a tall cabinet with brass trim. After he died, I took control of the keys. But Basil knows which bottles are where. Who else knows? Dana. He handled Anton's estate papers. He had to inventory. She frowned. He was in here alone for almost an hour, 2 days after Anton died. He said he was looking for a codicil Anton might have hidden in the books. Did you believe him? I didn't know what to believe then. Nobody does right after a funeral. That's why funerals are good cover for people who like to rearrange reality. I crossed to the window chair and looked down through the lace curtains. The park's iron fence cut the wet afternoon into neat squares. It was the kind of view that makes a man feel safe enough to take a sip without thinking. Miss Vardis, you said Anton was tense that night. Did he say why? He said, tomorrow I settle it. That's all. Settle what? That's what I asked. He patted my hand and said, the company, the men, the noise. He was irritated with me for pressing. She stared at the floor beat. I should have pressed harder. That line never helps anybody. You pressed as hard as you could without starting a war in your own house. She didn't answer, but her shoulders eased slightly. You could tell she'd been dragging the blame around like a suitcase. I did another slow sweep and found the only thing that gave me a snag. On the sideboard, beside a crystal decanter and a row of snifters, there was a silver stopper shaped like a grape cluster. It was slightly duller than the rest of the silver. I picked it up. This belonged to something. Celia looked, puzzled. It's the stopper for the coffee carafe, but the carafe is in the pantry. Basil doesn't use it anymore. Why is the stopper here? I don't know. She leaned closer. It wasn't there last week. Okay. I set it down exactly as I'd found it, dull gleam and all. I wasn't ready to call it a clue, but it was a pebble in the shoe. Let's see the dining room again. We went back. Same long table, same mirror. Same sense that tomorrow night 8 people would sit here pretending etiquette could keep teeth sheathed. I checked sight lines, doorways, how staff would enter and withdraw. The mirror on the wall caught the whole table plus a slice of the sideboard. That meant everyone could see everyone, which is either a deterrent or an advantage, depending on who's doing the watching. Where will you seat Mr. Wolfe? I asked. At Anton's old place. Head of the table. That's a statement. I'm not hiding him once he arrives. That would be insulting. I only promised not to announce him beforehand. Fair. I looked at the sideboard where tomorrow's wines and water would wait like silent accomplices. Who sets the glasses? Basil. He insists. He places everything himself. It's part of his craft. And who clears them? His assistants, under his eye. Noted. Chefs who insist on placement also insist on control. Control can mean pride or it can mean opportunity. I told Celia I was stepping out for calls, and she gave me a little office off the parlor. I shut the door, pulled out my notebook, dialed a number I keep in my head for situations when money and murder flirt. "Lon Cohen," I said when he picked up. "How are you?" "Archie, I'm terrible." "Tell me something cheerful so I can bill you double." "Cheerful. I'm calling before I'm desperate. I need background on Vardis imports, specifically on Hugo Vardis, Margaret Cleve, Leo Kershaw, and Dana Rook. Anything in the last 5 years. Lawsuits, debts, affairs, grudges, stomach ulcers, secret hobbies. You know my taste." Lon sighed like a man who enjoys the game but hates admitting it. "You're at the Vardis place?" "Yeah. Anton was a pig with truffles. He died clean," they said. "Clean might be a costume. Can you dig fast?" "I can dig while you're still talking. Call me in 2 hours." "You're a prince." I hung up and stared at my notes. A Thursday dinner, 8 days before death. The same 4 executives, Basil serving, listening, controlling. A note hidden afterward, a dull coffee stopper out of place, and now another Thursday dinner, same cast plus priests and doctors for garnish, and my boss walking in blindfolded like a sultan who hates travel. I tucked the notebook away and went back to find Celia. Tomorrow night was going to be a meal, all right. The question was, who was bringing the knives, and who was already sharpening them in the kitchen? Celia was in the parlor when I came out, standing by the fireplace with her arms folded as if she were holding herself together by habit. She looked up when I entered. "Well, I've seen the battlefield. Now I want to see the soldiers when they aren't performing." I checked my watch. "Where can I find the assistants?" "In the kitchen. Basil will be there too." "Good. I'm in a nosy mood." Her mouth twitched, half amusement. "That's why you work for Mr. Wolfe." I went back down the service stairs. The kitchen had stepped down from opera rehearsal to a practical march. One assistant was trimming something pale and expensive. The other was stirring a pot with a reverence that suggested violence if interrupted. Basil was at the counter, sleeves rolled, knife moving in a clean rhythm. He didn't look up until my shoes hit the last step. When he did, his eyes were courteous, in the way a locked door is courteous. "Mr. Goodwin, still with us?" "Like a bad penny." "Mind if I ask your assistants a couple questions?" His knife didn't pause. "They're busy. They can talk while they're busy. I do it for a living." He considered me for a second, then gave a minimal nod. "Briefly." I smiled at the nearest assistant, a young guy with freckled wrists and a face too earnest for this room. "Name?" "Raphael," he said, glancing at Basil before meeting my eyes again. "And you are?" "Leah." The other assistant was a woman in her 40s with hair tied back so tight it looked like it was holding her thoughts in place. She didn't glance at Basil. That told me a little. "Raphael, Leah, how long have you worked here?" 2 years, Raphael said. 6, Leah said flatly. "Then you knew Mr. Vardis?" "Yes," they said in different tones. I leaned on the counter lightly, casual. "How was he the last week he was alive?" "Same as always? Different?" Raphael opened his mouth, then closed it. Leah answered. "Tired, but stubborn. He ate less the last 2 days. That was unusual." Basil cut in without looking up. He had his cardiologist warning him daily. He was trying. Imperfectly. Leah's jaw tightened, the way a horse's does at a tug of reins. I filed that. 2. "Any strange visitors that week?" I asked. "Any surprise deliveries? People in the kitchen who didn't belong?" Raphael shook his head quickly. Leah said, "The Thursday dinner, the 4 from the company. That was not strange. It was sharp." "Sharp how?" She hesitated, then let it out. "There was arguing in the library after. Not loud, but hard." Mr. Vardis came down to the kitchen later. He poured himself water. He was shaking a little. Basil asked if he needed anything. He said, "No, I need time." Then he went upstairs. Basil's knife stopped a fraction too long. Then it resumed. "That's the first I've heard of that," I said. Celia might not have been told. Basil certainly wouldn't volunteer it. "What time?" I asked. "Near midnight." "And after that?" Leah shrugged. "Morning was normal. We cleaned. We cooked breakfast. We left." I nodded. "Okay, one more. Who handles the coffee service?" Raphael blinked. "I do, usually." "Usually?" "Mr. Holt has me. I mean, he likes it a certain way." Basil said briskly, "The coffee is integral to the progression of the meal. I supervise. Raphael executes." I looked at Raphael. "Carafe with a silver stopper shaped like grapes?" Raphael's face lit with recognition. "Yes, sir. For the library service. But we don't use that carafe anymore. Mr. Holt said it leaks heat. Yet the stopper was on the library sideboard." Raphael looked surprised. Leah didn't. Basil's head came up now. Finally. "It is there because I put it there," he said evenly. "To remind myself to have it polished. It belonged to Anton's mother. He liked it. I intended to use it tomorrow." "Is that a crime?" "It's a question," I said. "Questions don't need warrants." He held my gaze. There was nothing flustered in him. If he was lying, he was the kind of liar who does it like breathing. "Anything else?" he asked. "Not right now." I grinned. "Try not to scold anyone before dinner." He didn't return the grin. That was fine. I wasn't here to make friends in aprons. I went back upstairs and found Celia in the dining room, peering at the place settings like they were a ledger. She looked up at my face and read it fast. "They said something. Enough to be useful?" I didn't spill yet. Something about the way she was watching the china told me she was already close to panic, and panic is a lousy assistant. "Your chef says the library coffee stopper on the sideboard is sentiment and polishing." Could be true, could be theater. "And Leah?" Leah remembers a late-night kitchen visit from Anton after the Thursday dinner. Shaking, "Water, I need time." "Not in your version." Her hands tightened on the back of a chair. "He didn't tell me. He might not have wanted to, or he might not have known what it meant yet." I paused. "Miss Vardis, did Anton keep medication in the house, besides what Dr. Klein prescribed? Vitamins, supplements, and his heart pills. Why? Because a man who's been rattled by an argument and then drinks Armagnac and coffee could be a man who notices something in his body he doesn't like. Something that makes him hide a note behind a ledger." She went still. "Let's not jump," I added. "I'm just putting pieces on the table." She swallowed. "All right. Also, Basil knows Wolfe is coming, or he guessed it so neatly it doesn't matter." I watched her take that in. "You promised not to tell him. You didn't." "No." "Then he has ears somewhere. Or someone told him for their own reasons." "Who would?" "That's tomorrow's question." I checked my watch again. Lon Cohen would be calling soon. "Where's your phone?" She gestured to the parlor. "There. Good. I'm expecting a call with some dirt. After that, I want to see your office. Anton's private papers. Anything he wrote in the last month, especially anything he hid." Her eyes sharpened a little. "There is a locked drawer in his desk. Dana insisted it be sealed until the estate process finishes." "And you let him insist?" "He was the executor." "Executors execute. Widows own houses. We'll talk about that drawer in a minute." Before she could answer, the front doorbell rang upstairs. Soft, refined, and very much not on schedule. Celia and I looked at each other. "I'm not expecting anyone," she said. "Then we're about to be." I headed for the hall, already feeling that hush in the brownstone's cousin of a house tilt into something sharper. I got to the front door ahead of Celia because my legs are younger and because, in houses where the air is already wired, I like to be the first one to touch the wire. When I opened it, the man on the stoop had the kind of smile that belongs on a billboard for unfiled tax returns. Mid-40s, polished suit, hat held just so, and eyes that made decisions before the rest of him caught up. "Mrs. Vardis?" he asked. I didn't step aside. "She's in the house." "Who are you?" "Dana Rook." He offered the name the way some men offer credentials. "I'm sure you've heard of me." "Sure. You're the executor who likes drawers sealed." I let that sit there and watched the smile adjust. "Come in, Mr. Rook. I'll tell her you're here." He stepped inside smoothly, like he owned the hallway. Celia had reached the bottom of the stairs by then. The moment she saw him, her face flattened into a social mask that didn't quite fit. "Dana, this is unexpected." "I was in the neighborhood." He waved a hand as if that explained everything. "I thought I'd drop off a document for tomorrow. Nothing dramatic." "Nothing dramatic is my favorite kind," I said. "What document?" His gaze flicked to me. "And you are?" "Archie Goodwin, a friend of Mrs. Vardis. She invited me to help with preparations." Rook's smile stayed on, but the temperature dropped a degree. "Ah, preparations. Good." He pulled a slim envelope from his inner pocket and handed it to Celia. "It's a revised proxy form. We've had some late questions from the board. I want you to have this ready." Celia didn't take it right away. "Revised how?" "Nothing substantive, just clarified language." He tilted his head with practiced patience. "You know how they are. Your signature tomorrow will put some minds at ease." "Tomorrow I'm hosting a dinner, Dana, not a board meeting." "Forgive me." He looked wounded without missing a beat. "But the dinner includes the people who require reassurance." It seemed efficient. Efficient. That word in a house like this was a knife wrapped in velvet. Celia finally took the envelope, but didn't open it. "I'll review it." "Excellent." Rook glanced around the parlor like he was taking inventory. "How are things?" "Settling." "They are moving," she said. "In certain directions." "I'm glad." His eyes slid to the dining room doorway where the long table waited. "The menu sounds remarkable, by the way. Basil told me it's one of Anton's favorites." That snagged me, because Basil hadn't told Celia Wolfe was coming, supposedly, but Basil sure told Rook about menus. Either the chef was chatty with attorneys, or Rook was feeding lions. "I'm sure it will be fine," Celia said. Rook turned to her fully now, voice softening as if he'd noticed she was human. "Celia, I know this is difficult, but tomorrow is a chance to stabilize. Anton wanted the company to continue unshaken. The will is clear on ownership, yes. But ownership isn't operation. We can draft a management structure that protects you and satisfies the people who worry." "I'm not a China doll," she said evenly. "I don't require protection from my own property." "No, of course not." His smile warmed, gentle as a hand on a shoulder you're about to steer. "Think of it as partnership. Anton valued these people. He chose them. We honor his judgment." I watched her eyes harden, and I watched Rook notice it and glide right over it. He was good. A man like that could sell a rope to someone standing on a trap door. "I'll read your proxy," Celia said. "Do." He glanced at his wristwatch. "I shouldn't intrude further. I only wanted to be sure you had what you needed." He gave her a small bow. "Tomorrow evening." "Tomorrow," she echoed. He turned to go, then paused as if something had just occurred to him. "Oh, Archie, isn't it?" "That's what they call me when they want me to answer." He laughed politely. "If you're a friend of Celia's, perhaps you can remind her to keep the discussion civil tomorrow. Hugo can be excitable, under strain." "That so?" "I'll bring a fire extinguisher." His eyes flicked to mine, assessing. "Very good." Then he was out, leaving behind the faintest whiff of cologne and pressure. I closed the door and leaned on it a second, because sometimes a door is the best support you can get. Celia was still holding the envelope like it might bite her. He never used to do this. Drop by uninvited with a proxy in his pocket? Any of it. He never spoke to me as if I were a child before Anton died. That's what happens when the grown-up in the room is gone. I took the envelope gently from her hand. Mind if I see? She nodded. I slid a finger under the flap and drew out the papers. Dense legal text, the kind designed to make a person's eyes glaze and their pen wander to the signature line. I scanned for the landmines. There was one, not hidden very well once you expected it. A clause authorizing a temporary executive committee to act on behalf of the majority shareholder in matters of operational necessity. Meaning, they do what they want. You nod. I handed it back. This is not a clarification. This is a quiet coup. Her lips parted. He said it wasn't substantive. He lied with a smile. That's his job. I watched her swallow fury. Tomorrow he'll want you to sign it in front of everybody. That's why he's here today, to make it seem routine. Her voice went thin. I won't sign. Good. But don't say that out loud tomorrow until Wolfe is ready. Let them think they're winning. People show you more when they think you're beaten. She stared at the papers as if seeing a different language. Anton trusted him. Anton trusted a lot of appetites. Some of them are still chewing. I paused. Remember that locked drawer? I'm guessing Rook's fingerprints are on the lock. Yes. Then we need it open before dinner if possible. She hesitated only a second this time. Come. It's upstairs. We went to Anton's study. The room was tidy in that deliberate way of grief. Everything in its place so you don't have to face the empty chair. The desk was big, old, and had a center drawer with a small brass lock that looked innocent enough until you knew it was being used as a muzzle. Celia opened a cabinet and took out a small ring of keys. He left these with me. Dana never asked for them. Executors don't ask. They assume. I knelt, tried the keys until one turned. The drawer slid open with a soft, resentful sound. Inside were folders, a notebook, and a sealed envelope marked in Anton's hand. Thursday. After. No other words. Celia's breath hitched. I said quietly, Well, if I were a betting man, I'd say we just found where that ledger thorn came from. I picked up the envelope. It was thick, heavy enough to matter. And suddenly the dinner tomorrow night had moved one square closer to being a death trap you could map. By 7:30 the house had that dressed-up stillness you get right before a performance, when even the lamps look like they're holding their breath. If you believed in omens, you could have read them in the way Celia Vardis smiled too steadily at her butler, or the way Basil Holt's shoes made no sound on the pantry tiles. I don't believe in omens. I believe in people, which is worse. I was there early, after I'd taken the envelope marked Thursday, after, to the parlor, and opened it with Celia at my elbow and Lon Cohen on the phone listening like a priest at confession. Inside were 3 sheets in Anton Vardis's big, blunt hand. No letter, no drama, just a man writing as if he were making a ledger entry on his own life. The first sheet was a list of names: Hugo, Margaret, Leo, Dana, Basil. Beside each, a short line. Hugo wants cash, threatens noise. Margaret, figures clean, hands not. Leo, reroutes under cover of efficiency. Dana, drafted committee clause. Smiles. Basil, hears everything. Loyal to table. On the second sheet there was a paragraph, cramped like he'd written it fast. They think I'm soft because I eat. I'm soft only to my food. Dana has prepared a proxy that hands operation to a committee. Margaret and Leo cover theft with paperwork. They mean to force Celia to sign after I'm gone, so I must not be gone before I'm ready. Dinner Thursday is to draw it out, make them show terms. If I'm wrong, I'm dead. If I'm right, I'll have proof. The third sheet was smaller, almost an afterthought. Coffee. Basil insists on his carafe. If there is a switch, it will be there. Watch the stopper. Ask Klein about foxglove. Foxglove. Digitalis. A heart medicine that can become a heart killer if a man gets a shade too much. A man like Anton, already walking the edge of his heart, wouldn't need much shove. Lon Cohen, in my ear, supplied the mud to go with the bones. He dug fast, as promised. Margaret Cleave had a quiet side venture in Connecticut that bought spoiled shipments at a discount. Shipments Leo Kershaw had conveniently rerouted and marked down. The buyer was a shell tied back to Hugo's gambling fixer. Dana Rook had been papering it all under operational necessity and had recently tried to file a board motion creating an executive committee, blocked only because Anton was still alive to say no. That was enough odor for Saul Panzer. Wolfe had listened on speaker without comment, eyes half hooded, and then said only, "Good. We now know where to set the trap." So we set it. Celia, on Wolfe's instruction, did not confront anyone. She did not change the menu. She did not warn Basil. She behaved like a hostess with a strong spine and no fear. That was bait. And Wolfe, arriving at 7:15 in Celia's car, was the hook you didn't announce until it was already in their mouths. He came in with the slow majesty of a man who expects houses to adjust their walls to him. Basil's eyes widened for the space of a breath and then went smooth as glass. So he knew. Or he was very fast on his feet. Either way, he didn't drop a tray, which was a shame because I'd have liked the sound. Wolfe took Anton's seat at the head of the table when the guests were already in the dining room. Celia introduced him simply, "Mr. Nero Wolfe, a friend of my husband's." You could feel the room have a collective indigestion. Hugo Vardis, handsome in that loud, expensive way, smile already on the attack, half rose. Margaret Cleave went still, eyes narrowing not in surprise but calculation. Leo Kershaw's mouth tightened. His gaze slid to Dana Rook, who looked, for the first time since I met him, infinitesimally thrown off balance. Father Emil blinked. Dr. Klein did a slow take, like a man who knows Wolfe from newspapers and prefers not to meet him socially. Wolfe gave a courteous nod and sat. It said, "I am here. Proceed as if you can." Dinner began. Basil staged it like a sermon. First course delicate, second course rich, everything paced to the minute. Wolfe ate because he is Wolfe, and because the man was innocent of any vulgar appetite. But he didn't eat for pleasure. He ate while listening, watching mouths, as he'd told me, watching silences too. The talk was civil at first. Hugo told a story about Anton in Monte Carlo, how he'd eaten oysters at dawn like he was fueling sin. Margaret spoke about shipping lanes with the cool authority of a woman who'd never miscounted a dollar twice. Leo made jokes that were more like small warnings. Dana kept steering conversation toward stability and structure with the gentle persistence of a dentist. Celia smiled. I watched. Wolfe watched harder. The key moment came after the main course, as the plates were cleared and Basil brought coffee from the pantry corridor in the old silver carafe, the one with the grape cluster stopper now polished bright enough to blind a saint. He set the carafe on the sideboard. He poured cups with those long, steady hands. Raphael distributed them. Anton's warning had been right. If there was a switch, it would be there, between brew and pour, between carafe and cup. But there was no switch tonight, because Wolfe had already made sure of that without saying a word. In the afternoon, while Basil was upstairs rehearsing his sauces and I was downstairs rehearsing mine, Wolfe had asked Celia, privately, to have Dr. Klein taste the coffee in the kitchen the moment it was ready, before it ever reached the carafe. Klein, not told why, had done it. Excellent, he had said, a little strong. Wolfe had then had me, during the bustle of clearing the main course, drift through the pantry corridor and watch Basil's hand when he took the carafe from its warmer. I saw him hesitate. Not much. Just enough. Then I saw him do nothing. He carried it in and poured. Dana Rook lifted his cup first, as if to lead. Hugo followed with theatrical gusto. Leo sipped with a man's suspicion. Margaret only touched the rim, eyes on Celia. Father Emile took his like communion. Dr. Klein took a careful swallow. Wolfe did not lift his. He set his large hands on the table and said mildly, as if he were asking for more bread, "Mrs. Vardis, I believe this is the proper moment for a discussion your late husband intended to have." The forks paused mid-air. Basil, near the doorway, went rigid. Dana smiled. "Mr. Wolfe, I'm not sure what you mean." Wolfe looked at him as if at a specimen under glass. "You are sure? You drafted a proxy that makes an executive committee the de facto owner of Vardis Imports. You plan to have Celia sign it tonight, under the pressure of sentiment and the illusion of collegiality." Hugo barked a laugh. "Is this one of Anton's games? Because if it is, someone forgot to tell me he hired a fat referee." "Sit down," Celia said quietly. Hugo half sat because Celia had discovered that her voice could cut. Wolfe continued to Dana. "You also knew that Margaret Cleave and Leo Kershaw have been quietly diverting shipments to a Connecticut buyer at a substantial discount." His eyes slid to Margaret, then Leo. "A buyer connected to one of Hugo Vardis's creditors." Margaret stiffened. Leo's face flushed a dangerous red. "That's nonsense," Margaret said. "Our reroutes were documented." "Documented by you," Wolfe said, "and approved by Mr. Kershaw on the basis of spoilage risk, a risk that, curiously, materialized only on shipments earmarked for high-margin clients." Leo pushed his chair back a fraction. "You got no proof." "I have your proof," Wolfe said mildly, "because Anton Vardis left it, fearing your plan enough to write it down." Dana's smile finally cracked. "Anton left no such. He left sheets in a sealed envelope." Wolfe nodded to me. I got up, went to the sideboard, and brought the papers to Wolfe. He did not take them. He let them sit on the table where all could see the blunt handwriting. Silence in a dining room is never really silent. It is a room full of breathing people thinking as loud as they can without sound. Dr. Klein leaned forward, squinting. Father Emile crossed himself without meaning to. Margaret's eyes darted, reading, calculating exits. Leo's jaw worked. Hugo's grin was gone, replaced by a kind of naked irritation. Dana said softly, "Those papers prove only Anton's paranoia." "Paranoia is sometimes accuracy with nerves," Wolfe returned. "But we can address accuracy. Dr. Klein, you treated Anton's heart condition." Klein nodded cautiously. "Yes. Is a high dosage of digitalis potentially fatal to such a man?" Klein frowned. "Certainly. It can cause arrhythmia, collapse." "But why?" "Because Anton suspected he might be poisoned through coffee. He used the word foxglove." Wolfe's eyes moved to Basil. "Mr. Holt, you prepare the coffee?" Basil's throat worked. "Yes." "Do you also handle Anton's medications?" "No." "Who does?" "Dr. Klein prescribed them. Anton kept them in his study. Mrs. Vardis, not helpful." Wolfe tapped a finger once. "Mr. Holt, on the Thursday 8 days before Anton's death, did you put anything in the coffee carafe besides coffee?" The question was a rope looped neatly and laid on the floor. Basil's face did not change, but his hands did. He clasped them behind his back. That's what men do when they want to keep their hands from telling the truth. "No," he said. Wolfe nodded. "Then you are a poor liar." His voice remained calm. "You left the grape cluster stopper on the library sideboard after that dinner. A reminder to yourself, a token of guilt. Tonight you hesitated again when taking the carafe, but did not add the tincture. Basil's eyes flared. You're guessing. I am deducing. Wolfe set his gaze firmly. Dana Rook threatened you after that Thursday dinner when Anton confronted him. Did he not? He needed Anton dead before the will could be challenged and before the theft could be exposed. He knew Anton's heart was fragile. He knew digitalis would mimic a cardiac event. He required access to the coffee because Anton did not drink enough of anything else to guarantee the dose. You were his instrument because you had Anton's trust and the kitchen's control. Dana Rook went white around the mouth. This is absurd. There is no evidence. There is always evidence. Sometimes it is a man's conscience. Wolfe's tone sharpened a hair. Mr. Holt, if you persist in denial, I will call Inspector Kramer and have him question you in a less comfortable setting about where you obtained digitalis tincture and why it appears in your pantry inventory without explanation. If you speak now, you may be spared the worst stupidity of your life. Basil stared at Wolfe, then at Celia, then at the coffee carafe as if it had suddenly become a witness. His shoulders slumped the way a tent collapses when you pull the last pole. I didn't mean to kill him, he said hoarsely. Celia's breath made a small sound. Basil kept going, like a man stepping into water because the fire behind him is worse. Anton called them out after dinner, in the library. He told Dana he knew about the clause and the diversions. He told Leo and Margaret he had copies of manifests. Dana laughed. Hugo laughed. Anton said he'd go to the board in the morning. He swallowed. Dana came to the kitchen later. He said Anton would ruin everything. He said the company would collapse under scandal. He said Celia would be left with nothing but enemies. He asked me to help give Anton a quiet end. He had a bottle, a small brown bottle. He said it was medicine Anton already took anyway. He said it would just tip the scale. Wolfe said softly. And you believed him? I believed Anton was killing himself with food, Basil snapped. Anger flared through the confession. I believed he didn't understand what he was doing to Celia by staying alive long enough to start a war. I believed I was protecting the table, the house, the company. You were protecting Dana Rook, Wolfe said. Basil's eyes filled, not with tears, but with rage at himself. Yes. Dana made a sound then, a brittle little laugh. You fool, you absolute. Be silent, Wolfe said to him, and it worked. Dana shut his mouth like a man slapped. Wolfe turned to Celia. Mrs. Vardis, you will not sign the proxy. You will call Inspector Kramer now. He looked at me. Archie, use the phone. Tell Kramer Dana Rook is here and wishes to discuss a homicide. I did. Kramer's growl on the other end perked up into interest the moment I said homicide and Rook. In 20 minutes he'd arrive looking like a bulldog who smells meat. While we waited, Wolfe did what he always does when the net is closing. He spoke as if giving a lecture to children who had disappointed him. Mr. Kershaw, Miss Cleeve, and Mr. Vardis, he said, your exploitation of the company may be addressed as theft and conspiracy. Your participation in Dana Rook's coercion of Mr. Holt may elevate it. You may choose now whether to add stupidity to your greed. If you attempt to leave before Inspector Kramer arrives, Archie may attempt to restrain you in ways he enjoys more than you will. Hugo half rose again. I smiled at him. He sat. Margaret's eyes had turned flinty. Anton was going to destroy the company, she said flatly. We were keeping it afloat. By stealing it, Wolfe replied. A noble boy. Leo muttered something that sounded like a curse and resignation at once. Father Emile looked ill. Dr. Klein looked furious at being used, at the death he'd certified as natural, at himself for not seeing a foxglove shadow. When Kramer arrived, the whole scene shifted into the practical thud of law. Dana tried to recover his smile, then saw Kramer's face and abandoned it. Basil was marched to the parlor with a blanket over his shoulders like a sudden invalid. Leo and Margaret were taken aside. Hugo was told to keep his hands visible. Celia sat in Anton's chair and watched them all go with a stillness that was almost pity. When the house finally exhaled, Fritz's cousin of a butler offered coffee again, then thought better of it. Wolfe stood with effort, because even at a victory, he is still a man who dislikes leaving chairs. He leaned slightly toward Celia. "You were right to fear a trap," he said. "Your husband built one for them. They merely hastened to spring it on him." She looked up at him, eyes raw. "He knew." "He suspected," Wolfe said. "He was unfortunately correct. You may mourn him with less doubt now." She nodded once. "Thank you." Wolfe's eyes softened a shade. "Do not thank me. Thank your own refusal to be bullied. It is a rare virtue." On the ride back to the brownstone, he said little. It was late. He was tired. But his mind was still chewing. When we got home, Fritz was waiting with a tray like a loyal sentry. Wolfe took one sip of beer and then, without looking at me, said, "Archie, it is a lamentable truth that most men think dinners are for pleasure. They are for revelation. Tonight we saw what was revealed when appetite outruns conscience." I grinned into my own coffee. And when a lawyer thinks a proxy is more dangerous than a poison bottle. Wolfe allowed himself half a snort. Dana Rook believed manipulation was cleaner than murder. He was wrong on both counts. He took another sip, looked toward the dining room as if measuring the sanctity of our own table, and added quietly, "One should never use food as a weapon. It degrades both the meal and the man." "That's a pretty moral way to end a night," I said. "It is not moral. It is practical." He set down the glass. "Now go to bed. Tomorrow I'm owed a proper lunch." I went upstairs thinking that a dinner party can be a death trap, sure, but also a confession booth, a courtroom, and sometimes the only place a dead man can still get justice served hot.